Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Support Ops Hangout. I'm your host, Chase Clements. This is a show that helps you deliver a better support experience to your customers. And before we jump into this week's topic, let's go ahead and meet the rest of the crew. So it is the 3 whitest guys you'll ever meet episode. It's fantastic. And we're going to, so another reason why you should be watching the video thread here, video, whatever it's called, video version format, whatever. So Jeff has a fantastic new t-shirt that he's got to show you.
Okay.
He just has to. See, is that not the most amazing thing? And all of our audio listeners are like, what's he doing? What's he's wearing? So, Jeff, please describe your t-shirt. And we should also add in that if you don't know Jeff, Jeff is from Wistia.
So the shirt itself is a sketch, an outline of Spock's face with the infamous Vulcan greeting.
So there you go. And from Threadless, right?
That's right.
So
it's one of the Star Trek series, and it just warms my heart to have that in my drawer.
I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, so I had to make sure that we brought it up. And then next up, the other Chase, the great Chase from Automatic. How are you, Chase Livingston?
Doing very well. We've missed being with you guys, but glad to be back now.
Yeah, I don't know what t-shirt you're wearing, so I can't really. Greenville. There we go.
Supporting the local area.
Yeah, rep local. So sorry for being off last week. I know it's just summer vacations. We're like here one week, gone the next week. It's just a lot of fun at the end of the day. But we're back for this episode. We are wrapping up this series, making your product better. And with this episode, we want to talk about how support can actually help in the building of new features. We've talked about how you can influence kind of the direction of the product. We talked about how you can influence specific features, like which ones get picked up to be part of your product and which ones don't. But when it comes to actually building out those new features that you're adding, how can your team kind of jump in and help with that? So we're going to start with Jeff on this one. So Jeff, when a new feature gets picked up, you dedicate some programming and development time and all that to a new feature. Like, what role does Wistia support team play from that point forward until it's released?
Oh, man. I know the question is from that point forward until it's released, but I think it's important to at least say that for us, there's always somebody on the support team who's involved even before that, or right around that origination point, right? Someone who's like in the room when the rest of the team receives the outline of, okay, here's the project we want to do next. Here's why we want to do it. Here's how we think it's going to help customers. Because there's nobody who has a better bullshit meter for how it's going to help customers than someone in support, right? They're thinking, their mind is on the 1,000,001 little problems with your product that someone is writing in about every day. And if what you're proposing is some sort of far-reaching, future investment in product or engineering resources, something brand new in the product that no one's ever asked about, but you think is something that people will need in the future, the support team is going to introduce a whole bunch of rigor around, like, how is that? Can you outline for me how that's better than fixing one of the many problems that our customers run into every day, right? So I think that part is extremely important. And then in terms of tactically moving forward, I think a couple of things that are really important is communicating with the rest of the customer service team, the customer support team, QA, and then also updates for customers and or self-service help, like documentation, that kind of thing. And the support team is super helpful in all of those cases.
Yeah, so let's kind of start, Chase, at the beginning there. So picked up the new feature. You're looking at now kind of deciding what the details of that new feature are going to be and all that. Well, with Jetpack, for instance. So new feature gets picked up by Jetpack. What happens next? Like, how does your team help kind of guide the development team in that new feature?
Well, I mean, number one, we start off, giving feedback as far as, early designs and stuff. I think that's a lot of times in Jetpack and around Automatic where we start, obviously, is, somebody starts working on some designs for whatever this new feature is going to do, look like, et cetera. And so as a happiness team, obviously, and a wider, even the development team is always looking to see how we can make that better, more user-friendly, whatever. So that's definitely one of the big things we focus on. And, then after that, once things actually start getting developed, we are pretty good and are getting better about being some of the point people for actually testing all these new features. So we sort of have taken that on ourselves to make sure that things get tested well. We have checklists we run through, automated tests, obviously just manual user tests that we're doing ourselves. And so that's sort of the two big pieces I think that we play in helping our developers when they are either developing a new feature or, fixing bugs, whatever.
Yeah, so from both you gents, we're talking about having somebody there talking to the team and that kind of thing. Like, should that just be like one person that's kind of talking with the rest of the development team? Should it be like a couple of people, maybe like your senior people on the team, or is it just like wide open? Can like anybody comment on or suggest things on that new feature? Jeff, we'll let you take a swing first. Like, how many people are we talking here?
So I'm a pretty big proponent of small meetings, but extreme internal transparency, right? And I guess kind of side by side with that, I advocate very strongly for getting everything out of people's heads and into some sort of documentation that could be passed around and people can get the gist of what's going on at kind of a glance. So I guess tactically what I mean by that is you only have one support team representative in the room, and they're sort of the same week to week, right? It's not, oh, well, any support person can come. It's, well, no, we're trying to build up context with one teammate, and that may change, every 6 months or every year or whatever, but that's seen as an opportunity for increased responsibility and some new, growth path opportunities for that specific support team member. But then I think after that, at least on our team, it's up to the product manager and also the support team member to write all of that stuff up, right? All the decisions they made around how the feature gets built, why we prioritize building it, how we're going to roll it out, how that's going to affect customers. And then after that, it should be extremely available, right? And by extremely available, I mean like in people's face, in their activity feed in Slack or whatever, so that another member of the team can hop in and say, hey, did you consider this or did you consider that? Because otherwise, I feel like what's prone to happen is the new person or, the support team member is likely to make a mistake, right? A mistake is going to happen because, very few of us have ever done this before. And then we're going to do what feels most natural, which is we're going to put in the most senior person into that role. Because that's how you prevent mistakes, right? Is by putting the most senior leader in that role as opposed to a support team member. And pretty quickly that person is spread. That person ends up getting spread super thin, right? And we've suffered from that before where like the director of support is the only one who can comment on support related things outside of support's purview. And then two, it kind of cuts off the potential growth path and creativity for some of those really excited support team members. So I don't like when that happens. I prefer to say that the plan was out there and we tried to make it available to you, and you're welcome to look at it and comment on it whenever you want. But we're going to make it so that the person who's actually going to be implementing the messaging or the person who's actually going to be responding to the support tickets is also the person that comes up with the plan for how we're going to release this thing so that the support team has the best possible resources available, or the customer has the least friction points that lead to support conversations, that kind of thing.
Chase, is it kind of similar to Automatic?
Yeah, I definitely say pretty similar. We have generally, a couple of different people who are sort of the point people for this kind of thing that, interface with the development team and then, bring that information back to the larger teams as a whole during our, bi-weekly meetings or whatever. So yeah, I mean, relatively similar. We're obviously, all internally able to see all those discussions on P2s and Slack and stuff. So anybody can and will jump in, but a lot of times the feedback is sort of filtered through a couple of different people. So, it's not just a bunch of disjointed feedback. It's, they can sort of, coordinate and collate it all together and provide a big chunk at once or something to make it a little more worthwhile and worth the developer's time when they're looking at it.
Yeah, so for the BaseCamp side, we're a little bit more private than the feeling I get from you two. When we start on new feature work and things, that first initial couple of, a week or two is pretty private. You have your designer, your programmer, maybe two programmers in there, and then probably somebody from support. That kind of depends. But it's kind of the let's not let too many chefs in the kitchen right now kind of feel. When you do that, there's a real tendency to kind of like get things off track rather than trying to like go in one direction for the first time and try out a certain design or anything like that. So for us in the beginning, kind of slower, kind of smaller group, we tend to do what's called company heartbeats. So like midway through a project or so, the designer, developer, whoever will post a company-wide heartbeat so everybody knows exactly where that project is right now. That heartbeat usually has either a video walkthrough or at least screenshots and kind of explanation of where it's at right now, what the thinking is behind that particular feature, why certain things are designed the way it is so far. Kind of like Jeff mentioned, getting those things out of your head on the record, that way we can talk about them. And usually at that point, people will chime in and say, hey, did you think about this? Have you thought about that? Could we tweak it maybe to work this way? This is something that we've heard a lot from customers, so you want to be aware of that. So that usually happens, mid-project with a heartbeat there. And then at the end, that's when the project kind of becomes more opened up and other people get added to it so we can start doing the QA testing and all that kind of thing. Not that anything is, so I should preface this or should tack this on at the end, like these approaches, it's a lot of your mileage may vary, like the show is a lot of, right? So some teams, like I guarantee you if Carolyn was here, she would say, yeah, Buffer, it's open from the very beginning. Like we're all in there. It's completely open, transparent, public, and everything else. And BaseCamp is kind of on the other end of that. So again, what works for us might work for you, might not. I mean, that's just kind of how it is.
I think that there are a number of problems. Like the way that a team ends up working on this, and their processes come out of the problems that they're trying to solve or the problems that they experience in their companies. And that comes from all kinds of sources, from like the people that you have on their team, the leadership of your company, the market that you're in and the speed you want to move. All of those things have a part of that probably influence which process you end up you end up in. I think the thing that I think it all depends on the culture, but the thing about the BaseCamp model that I think would work just fine at Wistia, but wouldn't feel quite right is by the middle of a project, people have sat, like the PM and the designer have sat with it for long enough, and the engineers have sat with it for long enough that they're pretty for sure that this is what we should do. They've thought it through to the point that it's calcified in their brain. And so it puts the support people in the position of either one, being the jerk, feeling like a jerk and saying like, hey, I don't think we should do it this way at all. I think we should do it this complete other way, to the point that you might actually not say it.
Yeah.
You just kind of go along with it because it's already kind of in motion. And kind of related to that is, you may feel like you can make tweaks to the project, but you certainly don't feel like you can revisit the original problem that team was trying to solve and say, hey, I think we should have solved it a different way. And I don't know, my feeling is, I guess I see it both ways. You certainly want to be able to create that momentum, like you were saying, but in my experience on product teams, like they can get very echo chambery, and it's nice to have somebody whose responsibility is not to churn out product, to create new features, who says like, hey, like, I just don't feel like we have the right solution yet. Like, this feels like it's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve. And marketing folks can be very helpful for that as well when they say things like, how would we message this? How could we possibly sell this to our customers? And if you don't have an answer for all of that stuff, then you're just in danger of building something that causes more problems than it solves, or to waste your time. So yeah, I think that there's something there on both sides. It kind of depends on the problem that you're trying to solve. My guess is that the BaseCamp culture is one where it's like, it doesn't matter necessarily how long it takes for that feature to come out, as long as it's done extremely well.
Yeah, I think we got kind of going for us. The first being, we do all hands support, just like a lot of companies do. So designers, developers go into a problem already having this kind of customer mindset from the last time that they worked in it. And that's one of those where, on average, a BaseCamp employee will do all hands support once a month, maybe once every 2 months on the outside. So that's part of it. The second part being, our development cycles are pretty short. They're 6 weeks, start to finish. So at the beginning of 6 weeks, we outline what we want to get accomplished. And then at the end of 6 weeks, we either release those or we say, maybe not. And the third being that maybe not. There have been, so I can think of Google Docs is a good example with us that I like to give out. We worked on a Google Docs integration 3 different cycles before we finally said, this is the right approach, this is the right way to do it, this is one we're happy with. So we would, put in the 6 weeks, get to the end of that development cycle and go, it's just not right yet. It's just something's off, it feels weird, whatever. So we start again on the next one, or maybe we take a break on the next one and come back to that specific feature. So the first one didn't really work. We went to the second try for Google Docs, and that one didn't really work. And then by the third one, we were like, all right, we're good with this one. We like this approach. And that's when it really kicked in, and we finished up the Q&A and released that feature. We have a pretty opinionated group when it comes to new features, and I don't think, for new people, it can kind of be intimidating, and that's something that you kind of grow into, right? Being able to voice your opinions and things like that. But I think our team right now is at the point where if we get to the end of the 6 weeks, or even really in the middle of a 6-week development cycle, and it's just not right, messaging is off, maybe it's not targeting the right thing, whatever, we wouldn't hesitate to say, no, wait, let's kind of either take a break from it, put it on the shelf for a minute, or, pick it up the next cycle. And that goes with our interns too. Like our summer interns have been great. They'll tackle a problem, get to the end of it after a week or two and go, yeah, I thought it was going to work and it just really hasn't. So I'm going to shelf that and move on to the next intern project that we're going to tackle. So I think it's like you mentioned, it's culture, right? It's not being afraid to say, I know we just put 6 weeks into this, but it's not right yet. Let's not release it.
Yep.
And I don't know how long. So Chase, like when it comes to new development cycles, and I should know this because WordPress is public and everything else. Like, how long does a new release take? Like with Jetpack, let's go with Jetpack.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. Usually, we aim for, I think, the 6 week. I mean, we don't necessarily say 6 weeks exactly, but I think that's sort of the general cycle we follow. Some may end up being longer. We're working on some pretty hardcore like revamps to Jetpack right now, and so that's been going on for a little while. Not everybody focused, completely on that, but just some work here and there going into it. But generally, I think for just a simple like new feature, bug fix, something like that, 6 weeks ish is probably pretty close.
Yeah, and then with BaseCamp, we've done, so I think this is kind of the shortest cycle we've ever done. We've experimented a lot over the last 5 years since I've been there, and this is definitely more toward the shorter end of it, and definitely more organized. Not organized is not the right word, but like there's a very set, so in the week or two leading up to a new cycle, that's when you'll see support and the rest of the teams kind of pitch what they want to be included in the cycle. And then we call it the small council. It's, kind of team leads and Jason and David and everybody else at the top get together and say, here's the time that we have, here's the resources that we have, this is the stuff we're going to tackle. And that kind of outlines the direction for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, we want stuff to be shipping, but of course if it's not ready or if the design was wrong or whatever, we don't hesitate to kind of hold off on it. And so we've done on the far end of that too, I think like 2-3 month cycles, 4-month cycles, like that tends to be a little long for whatever reason. So yeah, I don't know if that's unique to us or anything. You mentioned your 6-week cycles or so. Jeff Wistia, like 6-week cycles, or what are you looking at? Oh, did my audio die?
Oh, can you not hear me?
Okay, there we go. Keep going.
Okay. We don't have really tight cycle timeframes where it's like at the end of this timeframe we want to see something. I really like that idea, but we've just never practiced that. Instead, it's like this project is worth X amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense for us to work on this for 2 months. If it takes us a lot longer than that, I think we should revisit shipping it in pieces or abandoning it or something like that.
Yeah, I think just for backstory on ours, I think we stole it from High Rise, from Nate and Chris and all the rest of them over there, because they were doing 6-week cycles, and it gets you into this like nice momentum thing, this kind of like regularly scheduled, like it's almost like a train. Like you get on it and you start moving, and then you just get this nice momentum going. It helps out. Yeah. Okay. So just to get us back on track for the show here, get that railroad, train, track, boom, there it was. So we all mentioned having QA involved, and usually QA is some sort of the support team interacting there, like with so our two QA specialists are Michael and Ann. Both of those are former support team members, so they kind of have ingrained in them what the customer wants, what they've been seeing before, and that kind of thing. So they approach QA at the very end there with a very customer oriented mindset. Chase, can you kind of talk about Automatic, how that last a little bit goes, and how the QA team and support team kind of step in there?
Yeah, so this is sort of something that is being revamped and has been revamped very recently, at least with Jetpack and the products we support. So we just recently split our Jetpack and other premium plugin support teams into 4 different teams. So they each have 6 or 8 folks on them, depending on time zones. We split them that way, and then we also sort of have a quasi team that we call the Dash team, and so we're responsible for testing new features, all of the new versions of Jetpack that go out, and so that's sort of how we're handling that right now. Is this sort of quasi team made up of members from each of the other happiness teams are also taking on, in addition to their like ticket responsibilities and stuff, essentially QA type roles within their normal jobs. And so we also, bring in other folks. We ask everybody, obviously, to test Jetpack on their own personal sites before we make a release. But as far as the nitty-gritty testing and reporting bugs and that kind of thing, the Dash team that is made up of different members from the different happiness teams is sort of the go-to right now, and it seems to be working really well for us. I guess we do have enough folks that if I spend an hour or 2 every day testing and not doing tickets, that the tickets are still getting answered regardless. But for us, it seems to be working really well.
Yeah, and so when we talk about QA, it kind of first comes to mind the things that you mentioned, the bug testing, the nitty-gritty, that kind of stuff. Are you also looking for kind of just general usability stuff, like any confusing parts that there might be for customers? Yeah,
I mean, that definitely comes up too. I think obviously our first focus is finding some bugs, because a few of the recent Jetpack releases have been a little rocky with some things that weren't caught before it was released, and then we have to do a point release pretty quickly afterwards. So but yeah, I mean, we're obviously always also testing just the new flows and things that all these new updates and features are bringing, and reporting on those as well.
Jeff, can you kind of walk us through that last QA part at Wistia?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, the support team member has been involved for a while on the project, and so they're very up on the context, like what we're trying to do, what the potential problems could be, some of the potential friction that customers might experience. And so a lot of times they'll get heavily involved in click testing, right? Our support team members are great at that because they've seen so many weird things break before, that they are great at knowing, like, yeah, if you put in a blank value and then click the button, that broke on a previous form. I wonder if I can break it like that way again. And then I think that they're also really good at they're so used to showing off the product that they're also really good at testing internally, like just saying to somebody, I wish I could even put words to how awesome our support team members are and like having them involved in this kind of stuff, because besides the product team, I think they're the folks that are like the most excited to say like, oh, have you seen this new feature? Like, let's take like an hour and let me just take like 20 minutes and walk you through it. Or let's just take an hour and try to break it. And I can't think of any other team within a company that's as devoted to how things work, right? Because they see the bad side, so they love getting ahead of that. So yeah, we get people involved, support team members involved at that step, and then our process is once a new feature goes out, we open an issue in our bug tracker that's just like catch-all for this new feature, so that as it comes in for support team members or through direct feedback to other teammates, they have one kind of catch-all place to log issues. Because as you know, it's when you first put something out that you just get that like lion's share. 90, probably follows 80-20 rule. 80% of your total bugs come out in the first like 36 hours after you put something out. And for WordPress, it's probably in the first 15 minutes. And support team members are really awesome at that step also in testing those things out, making sure they're reproducible and that those steps are well documented so that the PM and the engineering team can just kind of blaze through that list and get it fixed up really fast. And just as an anecdote, we launched a new player second week in June, and it had bugs. It had things, and browsers that it did not work as well. And in one of the best pieces of feedback I think we got was in their NPS review. Somebody noted, I just recently signed up for Wistia. I got I upgraded to the new player. I ran into an issue. I emailed support about it, and 2 days later I got an email saying that the issue had been fixed. And that's like the best support that they had ever experienced, right? And for us, we were being all hard on ourselves that we'd launched with problems, but for the customer, it was amazing to feel like they experienced a problem, and then they got an update very shortly after saying that it was fixed, and that was totally due to the communication and process between support and product and engineering. So I was really happy with how that went.
Yeah, I know from the support side, like when you first release a new feature or whatnot, right? Like it feels like there's so many problems, like there's so many bugs coming in and everything else. But then you got to take a step back and go, so that one customer probably only saw one bug. They're not seeing everything that you did. So it's not that bad. Like it's not the house is on fire bad. It's like maybe the toaster is a little bit toasty kind of. Yeah, it's the same way with us. So, when QA, so one of the things that we've been trying recently is, QA is, maybe it's not there at the very, very beginning of that development cycle, but they're there within a week or two of it starting. They're in poking around on things, offering feedback and criticism and that kind of thing. So they're there doing that. And as they're developing that feature, they're also keeping track of the bugs that they're finding along the way. One of the things that we started doing, which was really awesome, is we set up 5 different beta servers for BaseCamp. So basically, you can take a new feature, roll it out to a beta server, and work in it all day, just like you would on the production server of BaseCamp. So you can use a new feature all day long without it being pushed out to customers, which makes it really, really handy to kind of really do your due process and diligence and find all those nitty-gritty bugs. As we're finding bugs, they're getting added to a to-do list in that project. And the conversations are going there, which makes it really easy to kind of knock those off as you're going. The big thing I want to say with that is by doing QA throughout the process, it's really nice not to end up with this just avalanche of bugs at the very end. There's still bugs. We're still finding those and all that. But you mentioned, 80-20. For us, you're taking that 80% and like stretching it out over 4 or 5 weeks, which is really nice. Just gives you a little bit more breathing room and less anxiety and all that kind of thing. So that's kind of how we do it. Gents, I don't want to run up too much of our time. So anything else you want to throw in on this kind of topic before we wrap it up?
I just want to add that I think it's just really important that support people have the venue with which to speak up and say, I think we're doing the wrong thing, or I don't think we're doing it the right way, or I think our process is setting our customers up to have a bad experience, or whatever the feedback is. I think it's really important that support gets involved in that, because I mean, something just kind of as a meta topic, something we've talked about so many times is this feeling of the support team just being like a transactional, people come up to probably all three of us and say like, our support team just doesn't care, and they just kind of go through their work. They don't try to get any better. The support system sucks. The customers think it sucks. How can we make it better? And if you could rewind back to culture time 0, this might be something you put in place, is this idea of support people being able to speak their minds and actually see change. Because if you want to really make support people cynical and negative and, can't wait to say, I told you so to a product team that puts out a real clunker, then don't ask for their feedback. Don't take it. Don't try to improve your process to involve support people, because they end up feeling the brunt of it. And they can either be positive and constructive about it, or they could be real negative and a bummer about it. I don't think it's entirely on them to create that environment.
We're just going to start ending the show with, and that's the way Jeff sees it. And that'll be just a whole segment right there.
We should have started doing that a long time ago, because as you know, I will gladly pontificate on just about anything.
All right, so that's what Jeff thinks, along with the other two chases. Let us know what you think. Hit us up on Twitter. We're at SupportOps there. You can drop us an email. It's hello@SupportOps. Show notes will be up shortly, and then all of our shout-outs and just general whatever else we want to throw in will be in the newsletter, so make sure to sign up for that. Head over to supportops.co, and you'll find a nice big box to throw your email address in. We make it really easy. We'll be back next week, and until we see you then, have an awesome week.